meeting of the Partnership Scrutiny Committee being held today, the Thursday, the 7th of July 2022. This meeting is being webcast with the exception of any business that the committee resolves to exclude the press and public because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the Local Government Act 1972. Now, this meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with committee members attending in person at the Council Chamber in County Hall, Ruthin, or remotely via video conference. Just for transparency purposes, I'm going to just say who's present here in the chamber and who's attending remotely as far as committee membership goes. Now, remotely, we've got Councillor Pauline Edwards. I think she's the only member I can see that's attending remotely at the moment. Oh, Councillor Elfed Williams is as well. Sorry, didn't see that. And Councillor Elfed Williams is. Now, also in the chamber here, we've got the Chair, Councillor Joan Butterfield, Councillor Kelly Clewit, Councillor Bobby Feely, Councillor Martin Hogg, Councillor Terry Mendes and Councillor Peter Scott, and also lead member Ellen Heaton. That's who's here at the moment. Okay.
Thank you. I shall open the meeting now of our first scrutiny committee meeting of our partnerships. And our first item is apologies. And have we had any apologies?
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Jeanette Chamberlain-Jones and also from Nicola Stubbins, the Corporate Director, but Gary Williams is here deputising for Nicola.
Is Gary online?
He's online, yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Our next item of business is declaring interest. If anyone has an interest to declare, you'll find the form on page 5.
Just before you do that, I'll just read this as well. Okay. Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what that interest is and to advise whether it is a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the meeting for the duration of the business and can take no part in those proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal or prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign the declaration of interest form, which is available from any of the committee support staff.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, I'm an employee of Betsy CADEIRYDD, so would I need to declare an interest there?
Yes, you declare an interest as an employee. Is it a personal or prejudicial interest? Right. Okay.
Thank you. You will find the form on
Elfed as well.
As Elfed.
It's online, Elfed.
Are you declaring an interest, Elfed?
Yes, I'm the Director of Convent and Mental Health Advocacy Service on point 8 on the agenda. I have filled the form in and sent it in to Stephanie Jones this morning.
Sorry, Elfed. Dach chi'n gallu codi'r volume I fyny chydig neu? Sgynnoch chi headset, prin yn clywed chi?
Can I headset? Dach chi'n cloi fi rwan?
Then.
That's better.
Yeah. Yeah, dwi'n datgan diddordeb yn pwynt 8 ar yr agenda a dwi wedi llenwi'r ffurflen I fewn a wedi danfon o fewn bore yma.
In personol di hwnna, Elfed?
Personol, yeah.
No. Okay.
Thank you. That deals with that one. I have no urgent items that have been asked of the chair. Have we had any urgent items to you, Brianne? No?
No, I haven't had notification of any urgent items.
Thank you. We'll move on then. We're moving on then to the minutes of the, oh yes, we've got to do with the appointment of the Vice Chair. I beg your pardon, members. I beg your pardon. So are there any nominations for the Vice Chair of Partnership Scrutiny?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Peter Scott.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Well, if there are no other nominations, then I think that Peter, we need to vote and see whether that carries favour with the rest of the committee, but there are no other nominations. Are members happy to receive Peter's nomination as Vice Chair of Partnership Scrutiny? Thank you. Thank you. Peter, congratulations.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be
Vice Chair.
very pleased to work with you and
Thank you.
keep the Scrutiny Partnership Committee going to the best of my ability.
Thank you,
Chair.
Peter. Thank you. We will move on now. We've done the urgent items, we've done the Vice Chair. So we are going on to the minutes now of the last meeting of Partnership Scrutiny, and that was held on the 10th of February. And I do realise that there are no members here that, other than myself, that were present at that meeting. So I will move the minute as a true record. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Thank you. I'll go down the. Oh, yes. Are everyone in favour that this is a true record? Thank you. I'll go through it for approval. Any matters arising. Page 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. Are there any matters arising?
I had one, Chair. Can't get the computer to work properly, so I'm on my phone at the moment. There was an item, they were looking for better type of pesticide on the last one. I wondered if that had been progressed. I can't find exactly where it is on in the minutes, Chair. I'm sorry.
I can't give you an assurance from the department,
No.
but I do know that they did recall the pesticide that they were using, and they replaced it with the provider with another chemical mixture that was more user friendly, or I'm not sure the weeds would have approved, but it's doing the job and it is killing the weeds, Peter, and it was approved by the committee. Thank you, Peter. Are there any other matters arising? No. Right then. So have we got the people here to present the paper? I can't see them. We are moving on to agenda item 6.
Oh, right, okay. The
Okay.
North Wales Economic Ambition Board one, yeah? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. This is Helen will be presenting on behalf of the leader the paper on the Economic Development Board. Thank you, Helen. We've all received a copy of the introduction and also the North Wales Growth Deal. We've all got the papers and I'm sure we've all read them. So Helen, it's over to you to introduce them.
Just for information as well, we've also got the officers in attendance. We've got Emmeline Jones here. We've got Hayvon Evans, David Matthews and Stuart Whitfield from the North Wales Economic Ambition Board as well. They're joining remotely.
Did enjoy reading the report, Emmeline, and thank you for authorising the report. I can't, oh yes, I can see you. Thank you. Helen, over to you now. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, the lead member, Councillor McClellan, can't be here today. He's currently with the Minister for North Wales, Leslie Griffiths, discussing the regeneration of rail. So I'll be introducing this report on his behalf. So the purpose of this report is to provide scrutiny with an annual and quarterly performance of the work of the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. So the board provides all 6 of the local authorities in North Wales with a quarterly performance report, as well as attend scrutiny each year. We have officers from the Regional Growth Deal Portfolio Office here today to present and to answer any questions members may have, as well as Ddinbych County Council officers too. The recommendations within the report is for members to consider the contents and to provide any comments or feedback. So I'll now hand over to Emlyn to provide any further details, if that's okay.
Yes, diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Councillor Heaton. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And I'm coming through loud and clear. Apologies, I haven't managed to figure out on Zoom how to provide a corporate background to my video yet, so I'm still working on that. I've sorted it for Teams, but not for Zoom yet. Apologies. As I said, we've got colleagues from the North Wales Economic Ambition Board Portfolio Office here this morning. They will take members through a presentation of the highlights, well, a bit of background to the growth deal and the ambition board, since some members here this morning are new and maybe wouldn't have attended scrutiny in the past to hear the quarterly updates. So we thought that would be useful, but also focus in on the headlines of the annual report and the Q4 reports. Certainly, as you've probably seen from the reports, there are a number of projects within each of the programmes in the growth deal. Many of them, or most of them, long-term projects, and hopefully the report is really helpful to you and easy to understand around giving you a flavour of how each of those projects are progressing. And I'm sure Heath will touch on this. There is obviously governance in place for the growth deal, and that includes Ddinbych Council member through the leader and officer involvement in the programmes and the board overseeing each of the programmes. So we have a number of officers that attend those programme boards and obviously input in from a Ddinbych perspective. So I won't hog any more of the limelight, so I'll pass over to Heath now, who's the operations manager for the growth deal team, who'll take you through some slides and the presentation, and we've got colleagues here today which will help to answer the questions. So I'll hand over to Heath, if that's okay, Chair. Diolch yn fawr.
Good morning. Diolch yn fawr, Emlyn. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen with a few slides, which hopefully you will all be able to see. Can you confirm that you're seeing those slides before I start?
No, not yet.
No, okay, hopefully now.
Heath, I can see them remotely. I don't know where everyone else can.
Yeah, we can see them in the chamber as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I will crack on. So thank you for having us here this morning. I'm Heath Vaughan Evans. I'm the head of operations for the Portfolio Management Office of Ambition North Wales, and I'm joined today by David Matthews, who is our Land and Property Programme Manager, and Stuart Whitfield, who is our Digital Programme Manager. As Emlyn set out, just a few slides to introduce the papers really today. Ambition North Wales is, as has been mentioned, the partnership that covers the 6 local authorities in North Wales, but the board also includes the 2 universities, Bangor and Glyndŵr, as well as the 2 colleges, Coleg Cambria and Grŵp Llanryddiaeth Almenau. We as a portfolio management office report to the board. They set the direction, they make the decisions, and we are here to deliver. There is also an officer board that works underneath the Economic Ambition Board, known as the Portfolio Board, that we report to as well. So significant oversight there from all 6 councils. We do report on a quarterly basis and an annual basis to those committees, and those papers are shared with all the 6 local authority scrutiny committees, as well as UK and Welsh Government as funders of the growth Growth Deal. The board's been in existence since around 2016 and has set a vision for North Wales as a confident, cohesive region with sustainable economic growth. We have 4 principles that underpin that in terms of a connected North Wales, a smart North Wales, a resilient North Wales, and a sustainable North Wales. So that's just a bit of high-level content. The board has a wide remit across the economy in North Wales, but we are primarily here today to talk about the North Wales Growth Deal. The Growth Deal itself, head terms were signed in 2019 after a lengthy period and a lot of work from officers across the partners. We as a portfolio office then came into existence in January 2020, and by the end of 2020, December 2020, we managed to secure and sign the final deal agreement with both governments, securing 240 million of investment into North Wales, 120 million from each government. We have some clear objectives for the growth deal. All growth deals have set objectives that are built into that agreement with government, where we're seeking to create jobs in the region, to generate additional GVA, and to leverage that 240 million pound investment from government, seeking to deliver a total growth deal of approximately 1 billion. The North Wales Growth Deal, I should say all growth deals are structured slightly differently. The North Wales Growth Deal has been agreed on the basis of a portfolio which consists of 5 programmes. So we have our agri-food and tourism programme, looking to build a more sustainable economy to support jobs and prosperity from food production and tourism. We have a high-value manufacturing programme, looking to strengthen our position as a centre for innovative high-value manufacturing. We have a low-carbon energy programme, looking to take advantage of our natural resources and position North Wales as a leading low-carbon energy generation area. We have a land and property programme, looking to develop the infrastructure to unlock large development sites across the region to stimulate investment and create jobs. And then lastly but not least, a digital connectivity programme to ensure that North Wales is competitive and well placed to meet the growing demand for digital connectivity. That's a very quick high-level overview of the 5 programmes, which we'll just run through in a bit more detail. This is an extract from the report, which we think is a really useful visual to just set out where all the growth deal projects are. As Emily's alluded to, the growth deal being signed on a portfolio and programme basis means that we are looking to deliver 20 projects over a 15-year period to realise the benefits for North Wales. So that means some of our projects are at a fairly early stage of development and will take and have a lengthy lead-in period before we move to delivery, while other projects are already in delivery. I'm going to hand over to Stuart at this point just to give a quick overview of where we are with the digital programme. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, Kev. It's a useful prompt here, so I'll just run through those 4 projects you can see at the top of your screen there. So starting with our Digital Signal Processing Centre project. And this was a big milestone for the growth deal and the programme itself, in that it's the first project funded through the growth deal to reach the delivery stage. So that full business case was approved by the Ambition Board at the start of this year. The project involves investment in cutting-edge equipment to support Bangor University expand its capacity and capability in undertaking the R&D activities in telecoms. So they work typically with network operators, both large and small, and they also have a group of businesses around the region with whom they work with closely to help them increase their productivity, generate new products, and potentially, and we expect, as is articulated in the business case, to create jobs ultimately for the region. That launch for the project is actually this month, which is at the Dean Street campus building in Bangor, and it's going to be quite an exciting year for us to see those first benefits emerge from the centre, which itself has longer term plans, which the growth deal plays a part in helping to realise. More than happy to answer any questions on that, perhaps once I've finished the full projects. The next project there is what we call the Connected Key Sites and Corridors project, and the aim here is to introduce full fibre broadband connectivity to commercially significant sites around the region, so typically business parks, but also to improve the prospects for mobile connectivity to be introduced, particularly 4G on our transport routes. That activity to identify those targets has been extensive, and that's taken place over the last year to 18 months. Most recently, a comprehensive survey of 4G coverage around the region's main A roads, which I think geographically is one of the largest such surveys in the UK. The power of that for us is that it gives us independent information from which we can identify where we need to invest strategically in the region to make a difference on 4G connectivity. A key requirement to improve that mobile coverage is also fibre connectivity. So we're effectively hitting two targets in terms of broadband to business parks and improved fibre backhaul. That's the connection to masts, for example, through a single project, hence why it's called the Connected Key Sites and Corridors project. The SRO, the senior responsible officer for that project, is Barry Eaton from Ddinbych, and he has a project board around him, plus a wider stakeholder group to advise the board in making decisions. As you can see there, we're currently at the strategic outline case stage. That will be followed by an outline business case, and then finally a full business case next year. And after that point, we get into delivery. So a lot of work to be done just now on preparing the documentation for the board, for the ambition board to ultimately approve next year. The next project there is the Connected Campus project. The SRO, this is now Waller from Flintshire County Council, and again supported by a project board and stakeholder advisory group. The project is our largest by value in the digital programme. It's very ambitious in its scope, and at this stage, at this strategic outline case stage, we've identified 5G at, again, principally business parks, but also major transport hubs such as the Port of Holyhead as being the focus here. And this is to provide the businesses and the industries at those sites, again, with the most cutting edge effective technologies for communication, both now and for the future. So in common with all these projects, we're looking to introduce network infrastructure which is future-proof as far as we can, and also meets the needs of the immediate economy, the enterprise that we have here, and those for the future. So 5G is looking likely to be a key technology which we invest in through the Connected Campus project, but not exclusively. We've identified a range of network technologies which may be of relevance to the industries that we have. We're looking at the moment at advanced manufacturing. We see this as a big area for benefits from the project, and we've most recently met with the AMRC Centre at Broughton to understand how we can engage businesses around the region, including in Ddinbych, which I believe that they're currently working at the moment through a local project to see how we can harness that engagement for the benefit of the project. And then finally, our last few percent project, this is effectively our rural broadband intervention to improve the availability of superfast broadband in all 6 counties of North Wales. As I'm sure you're all aware, we have a wide disparity in coverage of superfast broadband, unfortunately, both in the UK and within the region, and that also falls within counties themselves. The project is at a fairly advanced stage now. We're expecting to take the outline business case to the ambition board this month for approval, and that's a big milestone for us because that will trigger the procurement process, after which we get into delivery with the full business case going to the ambition board early next year. I think that's the quick run through the projects. More than happy to take questions now if it's appropriate.
I think if we leave questions to the end, Stuart, if that's okay with the chair, we'll carry on through the presentation. So if I move on to the energy programme, just a quick overview here. The majority of the projects here are fairly complex and at an early stage of development. Just to highlight a couple, so the Moralice Tidal Energy Project by Mento Morn in Anglesey, which is a fantastic project, is now in delivery on the first phase of that project. Unfortunately, we We were unable to fund that first phase of development as was originally intended due to some EU funding rules, but we are in discussions with Mento Morn about a future investment in that site through the growth deal. And the second one that I would pick out is the Low Carbon Energy Centre of Excellence project with Bangor University, which the committee would have noted from the Q4 report is reporting red and is still reporting red at this point in time, primarily due to changes in scope and investment targets from the university, and they have requested further time to develop that business case and to confirm that proposal, which we are considering, and they will be presenting to our portfolio board that request later this month. If we move on to the next programme, and if I can ask David to come here and just give a quick overview, David, of the land and property programme.
Thank you, Heath. BWRDD. Good morning, everybody. I'll just run through the projects very quickly, give you an outline of them and currently why we're working our way through. Holyhead Gateway, this is a series of works within the Port of Holyhead to provide increased port capacity. We're currently working with Stena to scope out a way to invest in the port with the growth deal funding, working with a consultant, allowing for the fact that we have to work within state subsidy control and state aid rules as well. The nature of the works is that Stena will be looking to reclaim approximately 26 acres of seabed from within the port to provide that additional port capacity. The main driver for this now is to assist in the delivery and capture the supply chain benefits of offshore energy schemes in the Irish Sea. Tidal stream is one, but also offshore wind. There's an issue here in terms of the consenting for those large wind farms, which probably won't be completed until 2025, 2026. We're working with Stena at the moment in terms of a model of how we can de-risk the commercial investment in the port in order for that investment to play a role in delivering those benefits onshore at that time. So we're working in real time at this moment with Stena and their consultants on the way forward there. Next project is a Ddinbych County Council project. It's the former North Wales Hospital in Ddinbych. We're working with Jones Brothers, who are the development partner, and the council officers in terms of delivering the initial phase for remediation works and demolition works on the site to provide a clean site for Jones Brothers then to take the project forward and deliver the refurbished and safeguarded listed building, and also to deliver the enabling scheme of new homes and commercial buildings as well. Next site is another Ddinbych. Next project is another Ddinbych project. Is the strategic site in Bodelwyddan. We're working again with Ddinbych officers in terms of the potential change in the planning policy and the scope of the project that will reflect that change in planning policy, and we have to then assess how that then may impact the project as it sits within the growth deal. So that's happening in real time. The next project is the Western Gateway project in Wrexham, working with the local authority and Welsh Government here. This is a 12-acre block of land at the edge of the town for employment land. We're working with Wrexham. They're currently doing site surveys, biodiversity, site investigation, and so on. One of the issues that we've encountered on the Western Gateway site is it's adjacent to the A483 and one of the junctions on the A483. That's been called in as part of the road review panel process within Welsh Government to review capital expenditure into new highway schemes. The Minister's decision on that project, on the road review projects, insofar that it will affect Wrexham, probably will not be announced until the autumn. So we're waiting because there's a big dependency on the delivery of this project. We're waiting in relation for the Minister's decision, but making progress as best we can up to that point. Warren Hall in Broughton, similar project in some respects to Wrexham, employment land, located close to the A55. This site is owned by Welsh Government, 50-acre employment land close to Broughton Airfield and not far from Deeside Industrial Park. Again, this one's been caught by the road review panel as well. So we're looking for the Minister's decision probably in the autumn before we make substantial progress on this project. Next project is Park Bryn Keggin, which is just on the outskirts of Bangor. Again, a Welsh Government business park. Here we're making substantive progress at the moment with Welsh Government to deliver low carbon net zero in use employment units on the business park at the moment. There's no advanced factory units there, so we're looking to provide up to 3,000 square meters of modern, energy efficient, future-proofed employment space to kickstart investments onto the park and provide move-on accommodation for local businesses and potentially with investors as well. And that gives you a quick run through the projects where we currently are and what we're hoping to achieve in the fullness of time. Back to yourself, Heath.
Thank you, David. Next, we have the Agri-Food and Tourism Programme, 3 projects in here. The Glynllifon Rural Economy Hub is the most advanced. The OBC was approved last year, subject to Group Llanrwystr completing the planning process. This is another project that has been reporting red as of the Q4 report, primarily due to challenges around cost inflation at this moment in time, and the fact that the planning process had not commenced. We are anticipating that pre-planning application will be submitted in the next fortnight and that this project will move to amber at that point. Next, we have the Llysfasi Net Zero Farm, another project reporting red as of the Q4 report, and this project is being reviewed at the moment following an assurance review last year, which identified some challenges around the regional impact of the project, and we're working with Coleg Cambria to identify a way forward for that project. And finally, the Tourism Talent Network, again, reporting red as of Q4 due to the legal structure of the hub and some potential issues there, but we've made significant progress working with Group Llanrwystr to address those now, and the project is reporting as amber as of Q1. Finally, the Innovation in High Value Manufacturing Programme, 2 projects here. The Centre for Environmental Biotechnology project with Bangor University is at an earlier stage of development, just finalising their strategic case. And then we have the Enterprise Engineering and Optics Centre, which has had its outline business case approved by the board in April and is now moving on to the procurement phase before bringing a final business case back at the start of next year for the board to consider and approve. We move on to the next slide. That was an overview of where we are in terms of the programs. You've also got the annual report in your pack, which picks out some of the wider highlights from the activities of Ambition North Wales, which is greater than just the growth deal itself. I won't go through all of these on the screen, but some of the highlights from my perspective. We were successful in bringing in just over £1 million of additional revenue to fund specific activities that were complementary to the growth deal, in particular 500,000 in an innovation grant in partnership with Coleg Cambria and Llysfasi to look at pilot projects that would help the agricultural sector to decarbonise, which has been a really successful activity and one we hope to repeat in the future. We also adopted a energy strategy for North Wales in September, working closely with Welsh Government. And final highlight that I would bring to your attention is our successful delivery of the local full fibre network project, which was a UK government funded project and a precursor to the growth deal and the digital programme we have in the growth deal. And I'll just invite Stuart if you can give us a brief summary of what that project's delivered.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. So the project came about at a time when incidentally I was working for Ddinbych. Ddinbych was the lead body for a consortium of public sector organisations around North Wales. And as Heath says, we were successful in securing significant amounts of funding from UK government to deploy full fibre connectivity across public services in the region, covering local authorities, health, and other representative bodies in the region. We've reached over 300 sites now with that connectivity, significantly improving the quality of connectivity and the resilience of connectivity to those sites, including over 100 GP surgeries. Ddinbych itself had in the order of 65 sites connected as a consequence, along with other councils in the region. A significant part of that project involved taking connectivity into particularly rural areas, and we've seen a large number of community council facilities, or rather facilities which host community council activities such as village halls and community centres benefit from that. In some cases those connections have been in for a matter of months now, in others they've been in for over a year or two. So we're starting to see the benefits of that being reported to us by our local authority colleagues, and we hope to capture those benefits over the course of this year to understand the impact around the region. As I say, health has been a big beneficiary generally. That's both the health board itself and also Digital Healthcare Wales, which is responsible for the connectivity to the GP surgeries in the region. We are also looking to effectively extend the scope of that project now with some Welsh Government funding. So as Heath says, that was UK Government funding. Welsh Government have also now approved further funding to extend this to around 28 sites, 28 more sites in the region, after which we expect that we'll have taken full fibre connectivity, that kind of highest quality of broadband, if you like, to all public sector sites in the region which either require it now or are likely to require it in the short to medium term. So that activity is being supported principally by the IT officers from the local authorities. And again, I mentioned Barry Eaton before, he's been very supportive as the SRO for that new work, representing Denbighshire and the region more widely. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Stuart. Finally, if I may, just a quick plug for our website, uchelgaisgogledd.cymru or ambitionnorth.wales, where you can find all of our reports and information on all the projects and where they're at in what I think is quite an accessible format. Thank you very much. We are happy to take any questions, and I'll stop sharing the slides now.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm sure that there will be some questions from members of this committee. I think the first person that wants to ask a question is Councillor Bobby Feely. Bobby?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentations from the various officers. And I must say, when we had our first full council this year, I did ask our CEO what would happen if we were having a presentation in the situation where some are in the chamber and some are not. How would that work? And he said the presentation and the officer concerned would be seen on the screen. Well, in actual fact, most of the time we just saw the screen. And bearing in mind, most of us have got the presentation on our devices that we're using. It would have been nice to see a face. That's just a personal opinion. I'm sure the rest of the committee have their opinions as well. But the question I want to ask is, I don't pretend to understand all the minutiae of detail, but I can see some projects under the RAG status are in the red. David Matthews, hello David, nice to hear you, even though I can't really see you.
Hello, Councillor.
Use the phrase, I think, something similar to "in the fullness of time" regarding some of the projects that were falling behind. I wondered, some of the projects falling behind are the Bottlewithen project, the agri-food and tourism performance, and also the low carbon energy one, which you have related to. I just wondered whether we could have something firmer, i.e., you know, when the red may become green on that.
If I respond to you on the KSS Bottlewithen, there is substantive work going on at the moment with the council and Ambition North Wales councillor on Bottlewithen. But you know, the planning policy is changing substantially potentially from the KSS as was approved under the 2013 local development plan. We're in discussions with Ddinbych in relation to the nature of those changes, and we will be reassessing that project in the growth deal, probably coming towards the second half of 2022. I would also say that we're also developing a a system as well to look at projects which potentially could come into the growth deal. So I would anticipate that we will have an answer in relation to the bottle with them well before the end of this calendar year in likelihood. I think that's about as much as I can possibly say at the moment, I think.
Thank you, David. If I could come in to answer in relation to some of the other projects mentioned by the councillor. So the Low Carbon Energy Centre of Excellence project with Bangor University, the university have requested a delay of 4 months, taking us up to October for them to confirm the scope of that project. That delay hasn't been accepted yet by the board. So as I said, they will be presenting at the end of this month to the portfolio board, where we look to agree a way forward. But we would expect clarity on that project and its role within the growth deal by the end of the calendar year. And similarly for the Llisvasi Net Zero Farm project, we expect to reach a position of clarity in the second half of this year, whether there is a way forward for that project, or if it is best for the project to be removed from the growth deal, which is obviously a decision and a matter for the board to decide. They have the delegated authority from both governments to make decisions if projects are no longer suitable to move forward. So we don't expect projects to remain in red in perpetuity. Issues need to be addressed, or a position will need to be taken by the board. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, to an extent. Could I just supplement it, Chair? Just with, as you know, at the moment, providing something goes wrong in terms of national government, which is having a bit of a wobble at the moment, I understand. We've got this levelling up monies coming in. Does the growth deal relate to the levelling up at all, or is it something totally in isolation, separate?
Thank you, Councillor. They are two completely separate funding sources. The growth deal is one specific package where we have secured the funding, and obviously the levelling up is a new source of funding in which all local authorities are able to put their own bids in. I'm aware that there is a bid for the North Wales Hospital, which is obviously one of the projects in the growth deal, which we are supportive of, as it would enable that project to move forward. But they are separate funding streams, but we believe some of the investments that will be made through levelling up will be complementary to the work of the growth deal in terms of boosting the economy in North Wales.
I just wondered if you were talking to each other at all. Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question now from Councillor Peter Scott.
Thank you, Chair. It's just an observation of the quarterly report overall portfolio. You've got a risk of the red for inflation. It doesn't seem to be coming down. Is that going to affect many of the things you're attempting, or will you get round it? Will you get more money from other places? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it is probably the #1 risk at this point in time in terms of particularly construction cost inflation. Will we get more money from other sources? I can confirm that we will not get any further money from UK and Welsh government for the growth deal. That is fixed at 240 million. So we're really looking to address this on a project by project basis. Is it possible to make savings in terms of designs and materials? Is it possible to look at innovative procurement approaches? In some cases, we will be asking the project sponsors to bring more money to the table, to put more investment in to meet that gap. And in some cases where none of those are possible, we may have to look at reducing the scope of the project and what it might deliver. And obviously that would be a decision that the board would have to make, taking all factors into consideration.
Thank you. I thought reduce might be a word you would use. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We have another question now from Martin.
Joe? Joan, it's very hard to hear you, Joan.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's a bit better. All the other speakers are quite clear, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I did find it difficult to hear from the top table, as they say, when we had a meeting earlier this week. And I did make a complaint that we couldn't hear from this microphone as very well. All the other members I could hear quite well, but I was online and couldn't hear quite as well as I would have liked. Sorry about that. I will lean forward. And
okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. We do have a question now, if we might move forward, from Councillor Martin Hogg.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about GVA, gross value added. I understand it's a growth new deal. It's about economic growth. But how exactly is it sort of captured on all these different projects, and does it capture other well-being benefits? Are we only looking at economic growth and GVA, or are we assessing these projects in other ways as well?
Thank you, Councillor. It's a really good question and a topical one. All growth deals are required to have GVA as a target by government. So we have to have it, and it is primarily assessed on a project by project basis, looking at the GVA uplift from new jobs created. So that's the calculation, that's the metric in most instances. We have to record it for the purposes of our deal. We don't view it as the most important indicator. We have a very wide benefits realization framework, which is looking at a range of benefits, particularly softer benefits, the impact that we are having on communities, on people in the area. So it is part of the package, but it is not the be all and end all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that members want to ask? I think Elfyd, I think you're requesting that you want to ask a question.
Yep, diolch yn fawr iawn. Swn i'n gofyn cwestiwn ynglyn â'r cyswllt digidol. Dwi'n dall bod e'r gwahanol ffyrdd ydych chi'n mesur y cyswllt digidol. Ond un prosiect yn cysylltu adeiladau, a dwi'n cymryd bod ysgolion cefn gwlad yn rhan o hynny. Dwi'n meddwl o'r rhai o trigolion yn y mord i'n ffeindio'n eitha frustrating, oedd ysgol prion wedi cael ei gysylltu efo superfast broadband, ond oedd y trigolion yn ymyl ddim yn gallu gwneud hynny. Beth sy'n cael ei wneud i cysylltu'r gwaith rhwng beth ydych chi'n wneud a be mae BT Open Reach yn ei wneud i cysylltu yr unedig ardaloedd cefn gwlad?
Diolch yn fawr, Cynghorydd. Na i ofyn i Stuart ateb y cwestiwn yma pan mae'r cyfieithydd wedi dal i fyny.
Diolch, yeah, I caught the question, thank you. So the scope of the LFM project, which is now completed, didn't include schools, and the reason for that was Welsh governments historically had invested in fibre connectivity to schools through its LEADU and LEADU 2 projects. So the message to us at the time was that there was no requirement for additional connectivity to schools back in 2019-2020. So the scope for us effectively was everything other than schools in North Wales. I can't comment on the site that's been mentioned here, and perhaps that's one to be discussed with Ddinbych directly around what those plans and activities have been historically. The impact of the project beyond the public sector is important to note, in that if we take, for example, a library or a leisure centre, for example, the investment that we delivered through this project has had a wider effect on the quality of the network in that area. So each, what we call distribution point serving a property through the project has been upgraded to account for all premises served by that specific location. So for example, it would be that the homes and businesses in the immediate vicinity of those sites that would benefit kind of more widely. And we are seeing that impact now. The company that we've used is Openreach. You mentioned Openreach in the question, and we've asked them to supply us with some information, some more definitive information around what the extent of that impact has been in the region, both at the premises level, at the locality level, but also regionally. We expect it to be significant, and we will be pressing them for more detail in due course. In terms of how we work with Openreach more generally, Openreach has published nationally its exchange area plans for the UK, including North Wales. They're available online to view, and that sets out where they intend to invest over the next 2, 3, 4 years or so. It's important to note as well that the wider public investment in broadband in the UK now is controlled largely by DCMS, UK government, and they've announced their Project Gigabit scheme 2 years ago now, which is now starting to reach Wales. Next month, we're expecting to hear the outcome of a public review of broadband, which identifies those premises that currently don't have superfast broadband and don't stand to have it for the next 2 years. And the outcome of that review will help us with the Growth Deal project define exactly where we need to invest in the region to bring forward that connectivity sooner rather than later. And Openreach plays a part in the review by supplying information to government to explain exactly where it's going to go.
Thank you. Are you content with that answer, Councillor?
Yep. Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'd just like to ask a question, if I may, and I believe this might be for David to answer. I'd like to go back to the BWRDD scheme that is here, and in the indicator red. I'm just concerned about it. It's not just high risk, but it's gone as far as to say that it may not be retained as a current set out within this growth deal. And I am concerned that if it's not, and if it is, the indicator is red now, and there is a lot of fragility around the scheme. When will we decide to actually pull the plug on this scheme, and how robust is the scheme for us to be able to slot another programme of work that would be beneficial to Denbighshire? Thank you.
Hello, Councillor. Yes, I think we'll have a decision on BWRDD, and I appreciate there's a distinction here between local development plan policy, which is a council reserved matter, and its place, the project's place within the growth deal. I think the scoping of the local development plan delivery is something that we've been in discussion with Denbighshire, and also which gives a policy certainty. And then beyond that is the delivery timeline to actually deliver the project within the life of the growth deal, which again is a concern, which is why we have the red rating in the RAG assessment. I think in terms of where it sits within the growth deal, like mentioned to Councillor Feely, I think you'll probably have certainty on that probably into the autumn, early winter at the outside, I would imagine. Those discussions are ongoing. They're quite well advanced. There's broad agreement on most points. However, I don't think it's the right forum for me to sort of, give it a firm indication here and now as to what may happen going forward. In terms of possible replacement projects, we are in the process of completing a dry run on what we call a horizon scanning questionnaire at the moment. We'll be probably issuing that at the start of the autumn to all the various stakeholders, our partners, for alternative projects to be put forward for consideration within the growth deal. And at the same time, there's a discussion document in early stages as well in terms of the strategic process above that, in terms of governance as well, which will be being submitted to the portfolio board shortly as well. So I think that the building blocks are there in place. I think it's just a case now of going through due process, really. And I wouldn't be surprised if a future scrutiny committee, when we come back to you again in the future, that we will be sort of providing better clarity for you on these points, which both yourself and Councillor Feely probably answer the questions in a more open way than probably we're able to at the moment.
If I could add to what David has just said from a more generic process perspective, Obviously, the scope of growth deal projects is primarily a matter for the project sponsor, in this instance, Ddinbych with WAITH. We are not here to determine planning policy on that site. That is a matter for Ddinbych. What we do need to do with any project in the growth deal is if the scope of that project in terms of what was originally set out in the growth deal changes significantly, as is the expectation in WAITH, the board has to review that project and make a determination as to whether the project should remain within the growth deal and be funded by the growth deal. That is for the board to decide. In an instance where the board decides to remove a project from the growth deal, it is an economic ambition board decision as to a replacement project, but UK and Welsh government would expect any replacement project or projects to deliver a similar level of benefit and regional impact as the project that is removed, so we can deliver against our targets and our aspirations for the region. And there would be a transparent and robust process to identify any replacement projects. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm just looking on page 24 as well, that I have an interest in the communication and engagement. It is green, I have to say, but it does say that you've produced a video of featuring activities of pieces of work and so on to promote this particular region. And I wonder, might this video be available to councillors, because it would be a valuable tool for us to be able to see some evidence of what's happening. And I'm sure that we could perhaps, I'm not sure how long this video will be, but I'm sure that the full council would benefit, perhaps it's certainly in Ddinbych, from seeing the video, and certainly this particular committee would, that do scrutinise this issue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can ask our communications officer to send that on to Rhian to distribute to the members.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from anyone outside our committee? Emlyn wants to come back. Yeah, okay. Emlyn, would you like now to come back before we end the discussion on this?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, just to provide reassurance, certainly from following Hare's comments and David's, that we're working really closely with the growth deal on the issues that have been discussed. We're certainly preparing ourselves also for that horizon scanning exercise that David mentioned there, to obviously look at any other opportunities for other sites in Ddinbych. So we'll be working closely with colleagues on that. You mentioned the video there. We are working with Hare and his colleagues about potentially running a council briefing session on this, to provide the wider members with information around the growth deal, the programmes, maybe showing these videos and so on. So again, we're looking at that as an option for all members. And just finally, we'll, in accordance with the usual practice, we'll be circulating the Q1 performance report for this current year for the information of scrutiny members in the coming weeks, as usual, really. So hope that helps. Diolch.
Thank you, Emlyn. I'm sure, yes, I'm sure it does, because I'd already made notes on my papers to ask for a short briefing certainly for members of the Partnership Scrutiny Committee, but I'd already made the note to say that we would perhaps benefit from a briefing about the Economic Ambition Board, just perhaps an informal one. But I thank you for that, and looking forward to that presentation when it's ready to present. Thank you, Emlyn. I don't think there are any more questions from people outside this group that are in office, and there are no more questions from anyone sat around the table. So I thank the officers for their report. thank them for their candour. I think we should really keep abreast of what is happening. We're talking about mega amounts of money here that will benefit, I'm sure, all the region. And thank you so much for your presentation, Emlyn and David and Stuart. Thank you so much. And looking forward to the next presentation, and hopefully we're making inroads into the red areas and moving them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
I'd like someone now, we've moved to the resolve, the recommendations that we've got before us. And that recommendation is to consider the contents of the Q4 annual report and we've provided comments and feedback. So would someone like to move that? Bob is moving it.
Second, Chair.
And Peter's seconding it. Thank you. Thank you so much, officers, for attending. And it has been, we have dealt with the recommendation and we're quite happy to receive it. Thank you. Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, members, I forgot to ask you to show a hands of approval for the recommendation. And I see there. Thank you. Thank you. That's quite clearly accepted by the committee. Thank you, officers.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch.
Now, we're going on now to our next piece, which is, let me get my, yes, let me just get rid of this one. That's the one that I was very interested in. Oh, I forgot to thank you, Helen, for presenting for the leader. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you could have come and sat around the table. It seems that you're off on a limb up there, but thank you for attending on behalf of the leader. We are now moving on to the agenda item 7, which is the homeless and housing support services report. We've got the lead member here, Rhys, and so I'm going to pass it over to you now, Rhys, to introduce your paper. Thank you. Are the other officers here? Anne, I can see Anne Lloyd. I don't know where Nigel's here. Nigel Jones, and I can see Mark.
We've got audit, Joan, we've got audit here as well. So we've got Lisa Hart, who's done the audit report, and Bob Chowdhury, and Liz Greaves just joined us as well.
Thank you. Oh, yes, I can see Liz now. Thank you very much. I will now pass over to you now, Rhys, to present the paper. Thank you, Rhys.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn I chi, Cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Joan. Dwi wedi mwynhau y 5 mlynedd a dreilias I ar y Pwyllgor Craffu yma. Mae'n rhyfedd iawn bod yn ôl ag ar ochr arall y bwrdd. Ond diolch am y croeso, ag croeso I holl aelodau newydd yr Pwyllgor Craffu Partneriaethau hefyd. Mae'n braf iawn eich gweld chi. Beth sydd gennych chi o'ch blaen heddiw yw adroddiad ar waith y gwasanaeth digartrefedd. Hefyd mae yna atodiad 1, sef adroddiad ar y cynnydd sydd wedi bod yn y gwasanaeth, a mae'r atodiad hynny gan adran archwilio mewnol y cyngor. Very briefly, homelessness has been and still continues to be a challenging issue for all local authorities, and new approaches were called for by Welsh Government. I've been a member of this scrutiny committee for a number of years, as I said, and I've received reports from the Homelessness and Housing Support Services, and I've also been on the Governance and Audit Committee and have followed the progress with great interest. So to take you through the report today. We've got a number of officers present. I'm trying to identify them on the screen. We've got Liz Grieve, who's from the senior leadership team. We've got Anne Lloyd, the acting head of community service support services. We've got Nigel Jones, the service manager. We've got Mark Dixon, whose job description I've just forgotten.
Housing Development Manager.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, we've got Lisa Hart, the Senior Internal Auditor. So I shall now hand over to Anne Lloyd to take you through the report.
Thanks, Rhys. Okay, so this is an update to a paper that came through scrutiny previously in about November, December time, and is designed to give you an update on in relation to the homelessness service. So homelessness went through a significant change.
Sorry, Anne, I think you're breaking up.
Oh, I'll put my camera off. That might help.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. So homelessness went through significant changes back in early 2021, and I think the last time we came to scrutiny, we hadn't quite managed to fill all the vacancies that we had, because we'd developed a multidisciplinary team to help support homelessness. That has all been completed now, and the service has got much more bedded in to the approach that Welsh Government want us to take, which is addressing the wider impact of homelessness, as well as obviously trying to secure permanent accommodation. So just to give you an overview, really, the numbers that we've got in emergency and temporary accommodation remain around 180 households. Now, when we talk about households, that could be single people or it can be families. And what happens is, as we move people out, we're getting more people in. So the number is sort of remaining pretty constant, varying between 150 and 180. But the biggest issue we have is single people under the age of 35. They remain a high proportion of the number of people we're accommodating, because they find it so difficult, or we find it so difficult, to get them move on accommodation. And the other challenge we've got is very large families where there is more than 5 or 6 children and they need bigger properties. So that is a big issue for us. What we've done is, during the last sort of 12-18 months, we've worked really closely with our own community housing team and with some of the other registered social landlords, and we've managed to secure 99 households into a permanent tenancy in social housing through the direct lets process that we've had following the suspension of the allocations policy during the COVID outbreak. We also work closely with the private rented sector, but that has been quite challenging, because as we started to develop a private rented sector scheme, the housing market changed and the demand for rented property obviously soared and the prices went up. So private sector landlords obviously saw an opportunity, and the number of people coming forward to support homelessness was quite reduced. The Welsh Government have subsequently changed that scheme, and we're just implementing that now, which means we can take on private rented sector properties and guarantee a lease for up to 20 years for a landlord, which is quite appealing, I suppose, whereas previously it was only up to 5 years. So we're in the process of getting that up and running now. We've also been asked to develop what's called a rapid rehousing approach, and we've been working on that for quite a while now, and we're just working through and developing an interim plan to go into Welsh Government, which is how we're going to develop rapid rehousing over the next 5 to 10 years. And rapid rehousing is where somebody will come into homelessness, we will assess them, find them a tenancy, move them into that property, and then put all the necessary support in to maintain that tenancy. And that should then reduce the reliance on using emergency accommodation, such as hotels and bed and breakfast accommodation, and even if we have to use it, it's for a short period of time, whereas at the moment, there's a heavy reliance on that. So that's where we've got to get to within a 5-year period. That's quite a challenge for us because of the numbers we've currently got in emergency accommodation. One of the other things that we're currently doing, and we've just done, is award a contract for an early intervention and prevention contract. So what we've done there is we've gone out through our housing support grant funding, and we've procured a contract which is made up of a partnership agreement with Shelter Cymru, Clwyd Allen Housing and Warm Wales. And their responsibility is to get people as far upstream as they possibly can to make that intervention and stop people actually becoming homeless, because quite often it's people have got into debt or family breakup. Sometimes people just bury their head on the fact that they're going to become homeless. It could be that the landlord has just decided to sell the property. So there's various reasons why people become homeless. So it's very much around trying to get that as early as possible and prevent people entering statutory services, which mean they need to come into emergency accommodation. So that contract was awarded in April and is just ready to go live now. The other thing I just want to mention to you as well is rough sleeping. So you'll probably notice in this report that there's not much mention of rough sleeping, and that's because typically in Denbighshire we don't have that many rough sleepers. Our numbers remain pretty static at around 5 or 6 people, and that fluctuates, but we have got 2 or 3 people who have been rough sleeping for, or what we would deem as rough sleeping, for a number of months, in fact into years. We engage with them constantly, we keep in touch with them. They do not want to come into accommodation. So we do have them and we do manage them, and we've got a team that goes out and obviously keeps contact with them, but the numbers that we have are quite small. So the number of people coming into homelessness is usually through a loss of tenancy for some reason or another. As I say, family breakup, debt, antisocial behaviour. Sometimes it's people coming out of prison. So there's various reasons why people are coming into homelessness. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment, as I say, with this rapid rehousing model to make sure that as a council, through a one council approach, we're doing everything we can to look at affordable housing, suitable housing, to make sure we can start to offer tenancies. And that's why there's so many of us at the table today. And obviously Liz and her team are a key part of that, but not the only part of that. That service. Obviously we need to look at a range of properties. So it's just to reassure you that there is work going on to try and address the need for housing, and we're doing that as a one council approach. What I will do now is I'll pass you across to Lisa Hart, who'll give you an update on the audit, and then I think what's probably better then is that maybe we just take any questions that you've got, if that's okay. So Lisa, do you want to just... Yes, is that right, Joan?
Yes, thank you. That would be very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hearing from Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So the original audit of homeless accommodation was concluded in March 2020 and raised 7 risks and issues, 2 of which were major, one relating to the prolonged use of emergency and temporary accommodation, and the other in relation to insufficient monitoring of accommodation and citizens. But the low assurance rating was raised because obviously the significance of the risks identified. We carried out our first follow-up review of this audit and was reported to Partnership Scrutiny in December last year, and it identified a number of areas that had made improvements, but they were taking longer to be delivered than anticipated, and that was because of the COVID pandemic and the implementation of the new staffing model. And therefore our low assurance rating remained. This second follow-up review that we've just identified that considerable progress has been made, and there's now only 5 of 18 actions remaining. The main area for improvement is to do with the recording of case reviews and putting in place written procedures, and therefore we have increased our assurance rating to medium now. We plan to do our next follow-up review in December. So we will establish progress with the remaining actions there. The only thing I just wanted to just clarify, the purpose of this follow-up review is not to retest all the controls that were there originally that we found in the original audit. It's just to obviously establish progress with the actions detailed in the action plan. And the covering committee report mentions that it's going to Governance and Audit Committee in July. Just like to clarify that is September now as part of our internal audit update report. But all Governance and Audit Committee members have had a copy of this report as well, this final version. So we'll have seen the report already, but happy to take any questions on the audit.
Thank you, Lisa. Now, I think now we will go to questions from the membership, and our first question to officers is from Councillor Bobby Feely.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. First of all, can I just commend the work that's taken place? I know a lot of work has been done within the team to try to restructure and improve. And I know also how hard everybody works. The new structure has shifted the focus to prevention and gives a more wraparound service. I'd also like to endorse the sort of cross-service corporate approach, more strategic approach to homelessness. But I still think on a personal basis that it would sit better under housing. That's just my opinion. You know, I'm sure others don't agree. So I have got a few questions to put for you. One is to do with Housing First, and I wonder if this is still happening, whereby you're housed first and have 24-hour care whilst you're getting settled in. The other thing is relating to the audit report, just to ask Lisa. When I read that over 70% of the actions recommended by the internal audit had been carried out, I was disappointed that it was only a medium assurance that had been issued, and I wonder if we can expect an upgrade anytime soon. The next one probably would be Anne, which in your report says a high proportion of homelessness is in the 35-year-old bracket, which I assume this is the result of the sort of disadvantageous benefit cap. And I wonder if any progress has been made to increase this as part of the Welsh Government new legislation. They brought in loads of legislation. I know you've had to cope with that as well, but also money. You know, I wonder if they are going to try and address the issue, which is quite a big issue of the 35-year-olds. And the last question is, overall, I wondered if you could say that things have improved since the pandemic has lifted somewhat, and also jobs have become easier to attain. I wondered if you can see a benefit from that within the homeless team. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, yeah, I'll pick it up, Joan, to start with, if that's okay. So in relation to Housing First, yes, Housing First is still carrying on. So Housing First is for the most entrenched homeless people with the most complex needs, and is a longer term service that is 24/7 and is around tenancy first and providing ongoing intensive support to people. That funding has been coming through Welsh Government for about 3 or 4 years now, and at this moment in time is continuing. We work across Denbighshire, Conwy and Flintshire. We manage the teams that work across them 3 services, but the funding obviously comes across Conwy and Flintshire too. So yes, Housing First is still there. And the rapid rehousing model includes Housing First type provision moving forward. So where somebody is deemed to have really intensive support needs, they will get Housing First. But some families may only need a lighter touch because they might just need settled into their property and may only need short-term support. So moving forward, we look at, or even now, we're looking at assessments based on the level in need on the individual or the family that come into homelessness, and Housing First is a key part of that. So I hope that answers your question on that. I'll skip the audit question for now and I'll answer the other two, and then we can maybe go to Lisa for the audit question. Under 35s do remain a problem for us, and it is because they're only entitled to local housing allowance rates for housing benefit, which is lower than typically they can afford. We haven't heard anything that is changing, although I'm aware that there is noise around it and that it's going to have to be reconsidered as part of the wider agenda, but I can't give you a definite answer on that one at the moment, but we are aware that it's something that's being looked at. I don't think things have improved dramatically since the COVID pandemic. The numbers are still quite consistent coming into homelessness. We've seen backlogs in eviction, no fault evictions going through courts. So that has started to pick up. So we're still seeing the same numbers coming in. I think the number of people getting jobs from homelessness is obviously limited, because if you're homeless, it's quite often quite difficult to keep a job. But we do work really closely with Work in Ddinbyshire, and they do provide support to the people that we support. So we've got dedicated resource within Work in Ddinbyshire that work alongside us. So I don't think we've seen a massive improvement, Bobby, at this moment in time, but it's something that we're obviously constantly reviewing. So I hope that answers the questions for me, and I'll pass you across to Lisa to answer the audit question, if that's okay.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you for the questions as well. Just to confirm that we did actually consider the high assurance rating when we were pulling together the report, because obviously the progress that had been made. But there are actually two actions remaining that relate to major risks. So because of that, that's why we kept the medium assurance rating. But if the progress continues as it has done since our last follow-up review, then we hope obviously to give the review a high assurance rating next time.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Peter Scott now would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, again, coming second, Bobby's got in before me. My questions, again, were based around actions 4.10 and 4.11 about the internal audit, but Lisa covered that very well. Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm sorry, it was still on a low assurance rating. Medium, sorry. I'm reading my notes, Bobby, I'm very sorry. It's now medium, it has changed. I look forward to the next review in December, but I note from the recommendations that there's going to provide a further update on the 27th of July. Is that likely to happen? Thank you very much, Chair.
I think that's, they just mentioned earlier that was in September now, not July.
Thank you, Peter. Did that answer?
I didn't have a question, but Bobby asked it before me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Mendes, you'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, my question is deals with 4.5 of the report, where it addresses lack of affordable housing. Now, I understand that Ddinbyshire is not alone in this; it's pretty much countrywide. But what is the what are you doing regarding the lack of affordable housing, particularly in rural areas? The reason I ask is I've had a number of occasions where homeless people have been offered accommodation way out of the area into, for example, Real. So are you addressing affordable housing in rural areas?
Can I come in the first instance. I think where we've had to move people to RIL, that's because we've needed to put homeless people into emergency accommodation if there isn't any emergency accommodation available closer to where they live. And that can be really difficult because we don't have a lot of emergency accommodation in the more rural areas, because we never know what sort of demand is going to come forward. So I think where we've had to move people into accommodation possibly in the north of the county, that is because that's emergency accommodation. I think when we're looking at affordable housing or social housing, then that's a slightly different issue. And obviously we do want to try and accommodate people where they want to be accommodated at. I don't know whether, Liz, it's maybe appropriate for you just to talk around the SARS approach and what we do there.
Yeah, happy to pick that up. I'm talking from a perspective of social housing rather than affordable housing, so that there are technical differences between the two, but from a social housing perspective, we have demand across the whole county, but to be frank, the most acute demand is in the north of the county. So that's where we have the largest number of people waiting for social housing. According to law, you can only identify a county that you want to have social housing, although we do ask people to give us their preferences according to where they'd like to go, and the vast majority of people wanting to live in the rural or Prestatyn area. When we have social houses become available, both Denbighshire Housing and also our RSL partners, then we do go to the homelessness team first, and wherever the house is or the accommodation is in the county, we do offer that up. And we have had experiences where people have moved successfully to the south of the county or middle part of the county, but actually more often than not people aren't happy if they want to stay close to families and friends in the north, and that's where they want to be. So that's a slightly different answer to your question, except to say that we are looking for development opportunities across the whole county, and the issue of affordable housing in terms of housing for people to be able to purchase or rent privately is certainly a wider issue and something that we want to address with partners across the board.
Okay, well, my question then hasn't really been answered. I mean, are there any building projects in the south of the county in the pipeline or even on the drawing board?
There are in the pipeline from a Denbighshire housing perspective. I can't tell you, I'm afraid, I'm not au fait enough with regard to the RSL plans in terms of building social housing in the south of the county, and also the planning department know what applications are being put forward for wider housing developments in across the county. So we'd have to ask that question of them. The other thing I'd say also is that we do have a policy of buying back council houses that have been purchased as part of the right to buy scheme. So whenever those houses do come on the market, we do look to purchase those back. And actually, I think we've had a few. Mark might nod at this point. We've had a few over recent years that we have bought back in the south of the county. So we're not ignoring the south of the county by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the situation at the moment.
Thank you. Are you happy with that answer? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Martin Hogg has a question for the team.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds really challenging what you're trying to do. It sounds like you've got resource issues and all sorts, but you do seem to be looking to do some preventative actions. And I wondered, is there a sort of at-risk measure that could identify across the county what households are becoming at risk of becoming homeless? do you have that information available, sort of like an early earthquake warning system, if you like, because of cost of living is rocketing up, and you mentioned financial reasons are often one of the biggest drivers for homelessness. So do you feel like you've got a good measure, a good sort of foresight into what might happen in the future?
Yes and no is probably the answer on that one. I think, we know there are certain factors that can make people homeless. And to be honest, we did a piece of work through a revenue and benefits team where they did have access to data that could identify households that were at potential risk of homelessness, and that was maybe that they were falling behind with payments on council tax and things like that, or benefit entitlement. So we did quite a proactive piece of work as a pilot, and that proved really successful. But quite often we're relying on families almost coming and telling us that they're at risk, and that doesn't happen quite often until they're in crisis. So the whole point of this early intervention and prevention contract that we've just gone out with is to try and engage the at risk, but get people so there's a lot of education that needs to go on, because the minute you start falling into arrears with either your rent or your council tax or other bills, can sometimes be the trigger. As I say, it can be the landlord may just decide to put the house up for sale, and actually some people are almost in denial that it's going to happen until they're actually served an eviction notice. So we do know there are some typical factors, and we're looking at ways to try and engage with people much earlier on. Part of this contract that we've also procured is around education, and when I talk about education, I talk about that in the widest sense. It's about letting people understand that there is a service there, that the quicker they engage with us, the better, but also getting into schools and working with young people, just to try and help them understand that, they expect, well, if I get kicked out, the council will give me a home mentality. We can't give them a home because we haven't got homes to give them. So we are looking at education. We are looking at engaging with as many other partners as we possibly can. So, if somebody turns up somewhere to the job centre, for example, we've got somebody now based in the job centre that just deals solely with homelessness in relation to people coming in who are claiming benefits. And we identify at that point, are they at risk of homelessness? So we're trying to get as much services out there to engage with people much further upstream. But it's a challenge because people sometimes don't acknowledge they're at risk of homelessness, or actually aren't aware maybe that they're at risk of homelessness. So whilst yes, we do know the factors, and we do try wherever possible, we just need to keep getting the messages out there. Come to us as soon as you possibly can and get the help. We work closely with Citizens Advice. We're working as close as we can with a range of partners. As I say, again, work in Ddinbych, somebody looking for a job may very well disclose at that point that actually their housing situation is precarious. They will then obviously divert people into the homelessness team. So it's working with a range of partners to do that as well. So yes, but there is more that can be done, I think. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. It's encouraging. I think it's great if you've got great data about what's going on in the county. You can use tools then to look at that data and perhaps help. But it sounds like it's a fairly sort of stable situation in terms of you're helping people out of homelessness or helping them become more independent at the similar rate to people are actually homeless. So while it remains stable, I think it's all okay, isn't it? It's just
yeah, and one of the other things we've done is we've through our housing support grant, which is Welsh Government funding, which funds around wraparound support that we have to put into homelessness, is we're working closely with the community housing team and with private rented sector landlords. We've got a tenancy support team. So it's as much about keeping people in their tenancies as well. That is actually a preventative measure. If we can keep people in their own houses, that's a far better investment than somebody coming into homeless. So we're doing quite a lot of work to try and keep tenancies wherever we can as well, because as I say, that is a good preventative measure to stop people coming into homelessness. And it's like everything, if you've got a house, you can probably get another house. It's like when you've got a job, it's easier to get another job when you're in a job. So it's the very same thing. If you can, you know, keep yourself debt free, keep up to date with your payments, and if you do need to move, it's much easier to get references and get another property than actually when you fall into homelessness because of whatever reason. That can always make it more challenging. So yeah, so we're looking at it for both ends really.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Councillor Kelly Plewitt has a question now for.
Thanks very much. It's obviously a really challenging landscape, and I think sounds like you're all doing, you know, a fantastic job. But could you just expand on what provisions that we have for families with members of their households with special needs, such as mobility and care needs? And is there an ongoing programme for development of that type of accommodation?
Right, well, I'll start and Liz will probably join on this one. So obviously, you know, where we know people need adapted properties, we do have a group that look at that. And obviously, you know, Mark's nodding his head profusely here as well. So we're very much aware, you know, families that are in need, and we work closely with our, you know, our community support service wider team, the community resource teams and the social workers and things that are sitting within our social services, both adults and children's. So we do work really closely with these families. It's often a challenge if they have to come into emergency accommodation, obviously, but as a wider issue, yes, we do. So I'll pass across to maybe Liz or Mark, who may be able to give us a bit more information around the actual bricks and mortar situation.
Yeah, if I start and Mark can give more details. We have on our staff waiting list, we have a couple of areas of particular concern. One of them, about 50% of the people waiting for social housing are single households. So it's one person living there. So we've got particular demand of people that need one bedroom accommodation. And also we have a large number of very large families. So we've got over 40 families that need houses of 4 or 5 bedrooms or above. And those sorts of things don't come on the market very often. So what we do look to do is to, with our partners in social housing, we do look to adapt accommodation that we've already got. A couple of ex-council houses that we've bought back have the benefit of very large gardens. So we're actually adapting those to be able to meet the needs of a couple of families who are on our specialist housing register, and included in that are people with particular access needs as well. We do adapt housing to meet people's needs, access needs, and that can be done with a lot of our stock as it is, but it's just some stock which need particular extra space. Sometimes we need to build extensions. Mark, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Only that there is a specialist housing group which is comprised of all the social landlords operating in the county, and it's chaired by one of the council's occupational therapists. So they work together to find solutions to people or households with specialist housing needs. The only thing I would add is that in addition to what Liz has said, that we have schemes in the pipeline on flat sites which give a sort of a clean sheet to work on to include specific new housing which meets any needs which can't be addressed either through the existing stock, and occasionally we do purchase properties where our existing stock or the development program can't address the needs of those families. So that work is ongoing.
Are you happy with the answers, Councillor?
Yes, thanks. I guess it's just really difficult in an emergency situation for a family with children, for instance, with special needs to be housed immediately. That's obviously not going to happen, is it? But it's good to know that there's a specialist group that's chaired by an OT. So there's work going on there. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor Joan, can I just come back on that one? Because sometimes we're aware that families are going to come into homelessness. You know, sometimes we do know in advance that people are going to get evicted. And whilst we do whatever we can to prevent it, on occasions like that, where we know that there is maybe in the family there is some special needs, we special housing needs, we will do whatever we can to try and accommodate in the most appropriate accommodation, rather than just, our last resort would be to put somebody in an appropriate emergency accommodation. So where we do have some kind of notice, we pull all the stops to work together, across all the partners to try and find that emergency accommodation if we really have to, but it can be quite challenging at times if there is very specific needs.
Thank you, Anne. Are there any other questions? Are there any from the gallery? I can't see any. Can you? No, there are no other questions. Bobby, yes, of course, I beg your pardon.
It wasn't really a question as such, it was just an add-on to what Martin had asked about prevention in terms of homelessness, which was, I just thought I would mention the regional population needs assessment, which is done every 5 years, and we've just done one, which is the whole region, the whole of North Wales and the Health Board, and it is done to try and assess people's needs across the whole of the of not just Denbighshire, but the whole of North Wales, which may help in terms of knowing where someone is homeless or likely to become home.
Thank you for that, Bobby. I'd just like to ask a question, if I may. Legislation's changing within the portfolios of private landlords, in so much as they've to start paying taxes now on their portfolios and reaching the standards required. I think Shelter's done a huge amount of work on this legislation and helped government with it. So it's changing in the private sector, and we really do rely on the private landlords to provide homes for an awful lot of our population. We quite clearly are addressing the housing situation, but this is the homeless situation that we're dealing with here today. And how are we opening a dialogue with the private landlords to look where they're going? Because of course a lot of the landlords now are having to sell one of their properties, or perhaps more than one, depending on the size of their portfolio, to cover the taxes that are now required. And are we addressing that and opening a dialogue with the private landlords before they start making families that are living in their homes that go up for sale homeless? And I do understand that families are in denial. They don't really want to accept that they're being made homeless, and especially when there are children involved, when they see their family belongings being put out into the garden because there's no provision for them to take their possessions with them. So at what stage do we interact with the private landlords? That will be more in the future, I'm afraid, but how are we dealing with that? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, so there's a couple of things there. We've got a private rented sector landlord forum, which our strategic housing team through Emlyn's service, they manage that. So we've got a private rented sector landlord forum where, Rent Smart Wales and people like that will come in, and that's very much a peer, like a peer forum. So we've got that. So we've got access to landlords through that, but of course not every landlord engages through that forum. I mentioned the Welsh Government private rented sector leasing scheme earlier, and we were in a pilot project with Conway, which started unfortunately during the middle of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, and actually we were targeted to get 33 properties, and I think we only ended up getting something like 7, because the offer that we had was local housing allowance rent, and on the private market, you know, landlords could get whatever they wanted because there was such a huge demand for rented property. The Welsh Government have revised that scheme and have made it more attractive. So it's now up to 20 years lease where we take on the property, and we obviously guarantee the rent and for a small management fee, and the landlord is guaranteed to get their property back in the same condition as they handed it across. And there is also a grant available if there's any sort of small remedial work that needs to bring it up to the right standard for it to be leased. So we've got that as well. But so we do try and engage with private rented sector landlords as often as we possibly can. And again, you know, if somebody comes to us and they're at risk of homelessness because of the landlord wanting to sell the property or because of a breakdown with the landlord, we will get in there and we'll try and do some mediation, and we'll see what we can do to rescue the situation, again, to try and prevent that homelessness. So there is quite a lot of work going on. But again, it's very difficult to engage with everybody. And we work closely with housing enforcement as well. So if housing enforcement are doing anything through the private rented sector, again, we work closely with them, and we always try and tie in together. So if there's anything going on with the property that means a family could be at risk of homelessness, we'll work closely with the enforcement team as well to make sure that we're all working together. So Nigel, is there anything else that we're doing from a homelessness point of view that I might have missed in relation to the private rented sector?
No, I think you've pretty much covered that. But I guess just to add to that, with the new leasing scheme, and as you mentioned, we only managed to bring on 7 properties over a sort of 18-month period. Already within the sort of first 3 months of implementing the new scheme, we've had 6 interested landlords are coming onto the new scheme. So we're hoping that you know, it should hopefully open up these properties for us going forward. But otherwise, no, I think you covered most things. Thank you, Anne.
That's great, thanks. Is that okay? Has that answered your question, Joan?
Yes, thank you, it does. But it also then leads me on to another question, if I may. Do we only use registered private landlords accommodation? Because we do have a vigorous registration scheme in place in Denbighshire. And if we are to use their accommodation that's been offered, do we make that one of the recommendations that it has to be registered? And then if I could just, my very last thing that I want to say on this is on the audit report on page 99. And this is about families outgrowing the accommodation that has been afforded to them in the past. I'm finding, because of the homeless situation and the housing being so oversubscribed to, if you like, that I'm having families now that are outgrowing, which is in your audit report, Lisa, that are outgrowing the accommodation that we gave them or guided them towards prior to the pandemic. And that's almost 3 years ago now. So I've got families now that are at risk because they are in inappropriate housing now with their family needs. 3 years on, a 5-year-old child becomes an 8 going into 9-year-old child, which has different needs. I've got a particular problem in a family living in what is virtually a cellar, a family of 3, 2 children and 1 adult, that quite clearly falls into this category of outgrowing the need that we accommodated some 3 years ago. So I wonder how vigorous is this action, and of course the registration is the other. Thank you.
So if I pick up the registration first, and then I think probably I'm going to rely on Liz to come in and help me on the outgrowing properties. But yeah, Rent Smart Wales, landlords have got to be registered with Rent Smart Wales, and that is part of the conditions that we look for when we're taking you know, when we're taking tenancies on, or when we're working with landlords, we want them to be registered with Rent Smart Wales, because that is a legislative requirement. And it's partly what Lisa was looking for in her audit as well, when she was looking at how we, you know, manage the properties that we're putting people into. So yeah, so Rent Smart Wales, we work closely. Again, we're planning colleagues and we're housing enforcement colleagues. But yeah, landlords do have to be registered through that legislation. So that, in relation to families that have outgrown their property, again, it's, you know, if somebody comes into homelessness and we have to put them in emergency accommodation, sometimes we haven't got a large enough property to put them into. So if we're looking at emergency accommodation, it's always a problem when you've got a larger family to try and accommodate them. And again, you know, we look at suitability wherever we can. I'm going to ask Liz maybe to pick up around general housing when somebody's sitting in a house that they've outgrown, and what happens in relation to allocating new properties, if that's all right, Liz.
Yes, the case that you refer to, Joan, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm assuming, for the sake of the discussion, that this family is on the waiting list for social housing, and we have a process to go through that you're probably familiar with. Others aren't necessarily at this point, with regard to banding people's needs, and being in overcrowded accommodation is one of the things that is considered when it's decided how to band a family or an applicant. However, as you know, we've got an awful lot of people waiting for housing, and an awful lot of people in really very distressing circumstances who aren't homeless, but are still in very desperate and very urgent need for housing. And the fact of the matter is that we just don't yet have the housing available in order to be able to offer them social housing. So we do, as properties become available, we do offer, we and our RSL partners do offer accommodation on a basis, a banding basis, so the people who are the most urgent need are the ones that are addressed as soon as possible. I'm not going to pretend that it's not a distressing situation, though, to be living in overcrowded or substandard accommodation for longer than absolutely necessary.
Thank you for the answers. I am to accept them, and I'm sure that the committee have really had their eyes opened, I think, on the needs that we've got within our county, not necessarily within the real area. But I thank officers for their report. Are there any more questions from any of the councillors or anyone that's online? No, I don't see anyone wanting to ask any questions, so I am going to move now to the recommendations. And the recommendations for the scrutiny to be assured that the implementation of multidisciplined homelessness services across service corporate approach is in line with the WV vision of homelessness and housing support, and that it continues to the homeless prevention services aim to ensure that everyone is safeguarded and supported to live in homes that meet their needs. I think that we are to accept that, because I do believe from the report that we've had this morning that every effort is being made, and we can see quite clearly from not just the audit report, but from the reports that we've had from the officers this morning. And I do thank them, all the officers that produced the report, and certainly Anne and Rhys for attending as the lead member for homelessness. I think that we are to accept the report that we've had this morning, that we are indeed, I believe, on the right road. I think it's going to be a long road, but I have a confidence that we are moving in the right direction, that we've got the department now with officers that are really reaching out to the needs of our community. So I am quite content, and I am happy for someone to move the recommendation. Oh, and also the scrutiny review progress with addressing the adults on 3.2 and going over to progress of the improvement plan, to refer to the Governance and Audit Committee, the Chief Internal Audit provision, a summary of progress made to Governance and Audit Committee on the 16th of March 2022, and will provide further updates. And I think that update is still correct on the 27th of July.
I think that's September, I think it was said this morning. But that actually second recommendation asks you to decide whether you want another report coming here or whether you're referring it back to the Governance and Audit Committee.
Members, I'm in your hands. Martin?
Well, should we propose then that you know, we're happy? I think the audit is showing that you've moved from low to medium. I think things are moving in the right direction. I think we can propose that you know, we can go to Governance and Audit Committee, presuming, of course, that you're continuing to do audits and there's an audit process in place, and if things should slip and get back to low, then perhaps we should look at bringing it back to scrutiny then.
I'll second. I'm happy for it to go to Governance and Audit.
That Peter's moving, Councillor Peter Scott's moving it, and Councillor Bobby Feely seconded it. Is everyone in favour? Thank you. Thank you. That's quite clearly accepted. Thank you so much for the report. It really does give me some confidence that we are really moving forward in this. And I thank you, Rhys, for coming forward to present this paper. And while we were speaking and the questions that we're answering, I do have the family that are living in a cellar, and I am now going to, although I do appreciate, Liz, that you had no knowledge of this family, but it is a family that presented itself some time ago, and I'm going to pass it on to Rhys, the cabinet member now. I feel like I'm sort of jumping ahead of myself here, but I am taking advantage of that because I do believe that this is one of the worst cases. Thank you so much for your report, officers, and thank you, Rhys.
Thank you.
Want a break now for 5 or 10 minutes, or shall we press on? Break for 10 minutes then? Press on? Very well then. Okay, then we will press on then, and we're up to the 8. Wait, will I find it in my papers? And that is the safeguarding, I believe, isn't it? Yep. We're moving to agenda 8. We're not having a break, and we're going into agenda 8, which is the safeguarding. And I do believe that we have got the lead member for safeguarding with us, Councillor Helen Eaton. Helen Eaton. Thank you, Helen.
Hello. So I'm here to introduce the annual report on safeguarding adults in Denbighshire. And this is the previous year's report. It's April 21 to March 22. So this is from before I became the lead member. However, I have read the report and I've discussed it in great detail with the officers. I do believe this is an accurate reflection of all the hard work that's gone into maintaining the improvement of the quality and consistency of safeguarding work in Denbighshire. and I commend the staff for their efforts and achievements. I'll now hand this over to Allow, is Allow here? Or David, one of the officers, to provide further details and to answer any questions that members may have.
Are there any questions that you'd like to put to the cabinet member? I can't see anyone from the gallery. Do the officers, which officers have we got present? Yes, I'm just going to, I can't see them now.
It's David Soley. I'm head of service for adults. Allow is just trying to join us as we speak. It's her report and she'll be talking to the report.
Do you not want to present anything at all from the officers? No. Are there any questions members have on this item? Bobby Feely, Councillor Bobby Feely.
I think they're still waiting for Allow to join, are they? Is she there yet? Oh, she's coming. Yes, so shall I let her speak first then?
Joan? Joan?
David Williams.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joan, I'm going to have to leave the meeting, but just to give my apologies for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your apologies and thank you. What else?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have now just been joined by Allow Pearce.
Right. I still can't see them. Ah, there we are. Hello.
Hello.
We've just had an introduction from Ellen and we're waiting for you to now speak on the report, if you would.
Sorry, I missed that.
I was just saying that we just had the introduction from the lead member, Ellen, and we were now waiting for you to speak on the report, if you would.
Okay, thank you. This is what you've all had sent to you. This is the annual report from the adult safeguarding team that gives an overview of the work of the team over the last year, finishing in 31st of March 2022. And it's sort of, it's a performance report that gives you an overview of our work, essentially. The report, as you've sort of seen, details the past 12-month activity. And we've focused within the team on maintaining the improvement in the consistency and quality of the safeguarding work, including the performance against the Welsh Government's performance indicator, which is that we complete inquiries within 7 working days. And when I talk about inquiries, we're talking about when referrals come in to the team, they have 7 working days to carry out an inquiry into the circumstances that's been presented. We've also been fully implementing the Wales safeguarding procedures, which includes reports or referrals relating to a person in a position of trust, which is Section 5 referrals, which we talk about later in the report. You will see within the report as well some data in terms of number of referrals received over the last 3 years. We try and keep that number down so that you're not getting the last 10 years. The number of referrals have decreased since COVID, and they're not sort of picking up, but we're not too worried about that. We've certainly seen similar patterns within neighbouring authorities. Within the report, you'll see that obviously we're referring to the referrals not having increased to the level they were pre-COVID. However, what the team are receiving are a number of telephone calls into the safeguarding team from provider services, other professionals who are seeking advice or guidance regarding to safeguarding issues. And this in a way gives us the impression that safeguarding is very much on people's agenda, which is the important element to remember here. I'm not going to go through every detail with it within the report. Later on here, we talk about the implementation of Section 5, i.e. allegations of concerns about practitioners and those in positions of trust. This is a relatively new area within the Wales procedures, and it hasn't been without its challenges. I think one of the case studies within the pack refers to this area of work, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on this area, which might not be as familiar as safeguarding in general to you. The report then goes on to talk about the type of abuse being reported, and the appendix to the report gives you some pie charts to try and show that in a different way. The most common type of abuse referred is physical abuse and neglect. Very similar trends to previous years and similar to national trends as well.
Thank you.
I mentioned, sorry.
Sorry, Owen.
Did you have a question?
No, I shall wait.
No. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll go back to the report. I referred earlier to a performance indicator of the time we have to complete an inquiry. And I'm pleased to sort of say that our performance on this indicator remains very high. 99.7% of inquiries were completed within the 7 working day timescale for this last year. The team have worked incredibly hard to ensure that consistency and that referrals coming in are dealt with in a timely manner. The report then goes on to talk about another area of safeguarding called the deprivation of liberty safeguards, or DOLs as we refer to them day to day. And you will sort of see some statistics there in the report. There's been an increase in the number of applications for the deprivation of liberty safeguard from last year. We received 423 applications coming in. There could be several reasons for the increase, but they come in from care homes and nursing homes. When an application comes in for a deprivation of liberty safeguard, it is usually relating to an individual in a care home who does not have capacity to make a decision to live in a care home, and therefore assessments need to be carried out to ensure that that placement is in their best interest. You will see from the report again the number of authorisations that have been granted over the last year. There's a great deal of work within this area. And later on in the report, you will see there's a reference to liberty protection safeguards, because this area of work is changing. The deprivation of liberty safeguards is turning into a liberty protection safeguards, although we have not yet got date of implementation, because it sounds as if that's changing. And again, there are some statistics around this area of work which obviously I'm quite happy to answer questions on later. The report talks about key achievements, as already stated, keeping up our performance around the Section 126 inquiries is one of our key achievements. We've also carried out our quarterly audits on the safeguarding work by looking at samples of safeguarding cases and looking at them from quality and consistency point of view. We've also developed a further monitoring for the quality of the work relating to Section 5, as I mentioned earlier, and we've developed an audit tool for that area of work and carried out an audit in that area. We've maintained the new ways of working, that is holding strategy meetings and Section 5 strategy discussions via virtual platforms, mainly via Teams. This has continued to work really well for us and has improved representation from partner agencies at these meetings. We're going to continue to closely monitor this and possibly continue these virtual platforms going forward. We may well, if the need arises, develop into more blended approach. We are currently also reviewing and developing a new adult protection and support order process. This is an area of the Act that enables authorised officers to enter the premises where it is deemed that there's an adult at risk present and we need to have access to them. It's an interesting area of the Act and not an area that we have to use on a regular basis, and that brings with it its own challenges in terms of ensuring that our processes are kept up to date. Within the appendix, you will see the data, as I said, and we've also included 2 case studies just to hopefully give you more of a flavour of the type of work that we do within the safeguarding team and maybe brings it more to light. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members present? Peter, Councillor Peter Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the pie charts. I think we've seen these a few years ago, and the places of abuse, care homes is still very high, 62%, and paid employees. Does that mean people in care homes are going to get abused more often? Is anything we can do about these care homes?
No, I think it doesn't necessarily mean that people in care homes are abused more than people in other places. You would expect a higher number of referrals from such establishments because you're dealing with vulnerable people, but staff also have a duty to report, and therefore you would expect it, I suppose, is what I'm saying. It does not necessarily mean that there is more abuse happening in care homes than in other places. And what you've got to remember as well is what we have here is number of referrals coming in. That doesn't mean to say that abuse has happened every time, but it means that concerns are being raised, which is important, that can be looked into. And we can investigate what the issues are.
Thank you. Councillor Elvid, where is he? On the screen. Your question?
Hello, yes, thank you, Chair. If I could have a bit of indulgence, I got probably about 3 questions, but one might affect the other. So if I ask them one at a time, if that's okay. I noticed from your report, Allo, and I just want to compliment your team first. I know the hard work that you and your team do in this area, but I want to concentrate specifically on the dolls area. I noticed from the report that 423 referrals were received and 236 authorizations given. Does that mean that the 187 remaining didn't meet the criteria, or is there a kind of waiting list, or what's the situation with those?
There is a waiting list. Sadly, we can't keep up with the demand. There is a waiting list that we manage by reviewing on a regular basis, and we put a RAG status on the waiting list as well, so that individuals who are unbefriended, i.e. they haven't got any family or anybody else visiting, that kind of thing, go high up the list. If they're objecting to being in a care home, they get a priority as well. And so we've got a sort of a red, amber and green status, and we continually review the waiting list and ensure that we know about any changes in individuals' circumstances that will inform that. But it's a continual battle to sort of decrease that waiting list.
Okay, thank you very much. So that leads on to my second question, really, because you mentioned also in the report that 2 temporary BI assessors were taken on. You know, I know you're fully aware that, you know, under the Mental Impact Capacity Act, there needs to be, as this is a safeguarding issue, if we don't assess these people correctly, that as a council, we are falling foul of the Mental Capacity Act.
Yeah.
Are these 2 BIA assessors, is there any plans to keep them on permanently? And if not, should we as a council or as a committee be recommending really that additional funding is put aside so that we are comply with the Mental Capacity Act?
We are currently looking at, because we've got a member of staff who's retiring from the safeguarding team, and we are currently looking to remodel the team to try and increase our capacity. But given the changes coming with the liberty protection safeguards, we are trying to sort of look ahead to see what kind of resource we'll need going forward. Certainly the team as it is insufficient.
Well, that leads on to my final question regarding the liberty protection safeguards. Is potentially that's going to come in next April, but that's a big question mark. And as you've just touched on, you know, there's talk about the number of people that might be needing to be assessed is maybe threefold what's being done currently. So I think you've touched on it really. The resources required in this field needs to be looked at to increase the number of staff available to meet the council's requirements under the Mental Capacity Act, and maybe that's something that possibly, Chair, needs to be looked at.
There's also, Albert, the liberty protection safeguards will have a big impact on all our operational teams as well, not just the safeguarding team. So there will be sort of quite an impact when that's finally implemented, I think.
Thank you, Ala. That's all my questions, but maybe, Chair, that's something we need to consider as a committee, the resources, or you will advise of who needs to be looking at these resources for Ala's team, because I think there's going to be a huge increase in work that they're going to have to undertake in moving forward under the LPS.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think David wants to answer as part of the questions that you've put to the officers. David, do you want to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Williams asks some really good questions, and they go to the heart, really, of why we're moving from the deprivation of liberty safeguards to the liberty protection safeguards. Doles, as they're known, are treated very much as a separate piece of work in relation to work under the liberty protection safeguards.
Yeah. Go off, please.
Okay, bear with me. Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, they were good questions because and they go to the heart of why we're moving from doles to the liberty protection safeguards, because at the moment doles are treated very much as a separate piece of work, whereas liberty protection safeguards will be a bit like safeguarding. They'll become everybody's business. So when you start the process of assessing somebody, if it becomes apparent that you're going to be able to, you're going to have to deprive them of their liberty as part of the care and support plan, then you will take that into consideration right from the start. So you are right, Councillor Williams, there will be far more assessments, and we are going to have to look at the capacity required to complete those assessments. But it should be that these assessments are done far earlier in the process. So we are in the process at the moment of looking at the consultation around the implementation of the liberty protection safeguards, and we will in the next 6 months or so have to make decisions about what capacity we were required to implement the protections and also to comply with our Capacity Act responsibilities.
Thank you. I think Nicola wants to come in now.
Diolch, Chair. Yes, and just picking up on the issue around recruitment and retention of staff. There is a particular challenge at the moment in terms of recruiting and retaining sufficiently qualified and experienced staff across all parts of social care, adults and children's. And as you know, just been pointed out, this is a very specialised area. It is something that corporately we are very aware of. It's on our corporate risk register. CET met only last week to discuss this and what actions we might be able to take. Unfortunately, it's not a Ddinbyshire situation. It's a situation across all local authorities, not only in Wales, but across the UK, and is actually across most public sector bodies at the moment. So whilst, you know, we will want to look to recruit into this area, I can't sort of let committee think that this is going to be something that we're going to achieve easily. And whilst this is a statutory duty and we take that very seriously, given the levels of staffing, we are struggling across all of our statutory services at the moment.
Thank you for that, Nicola. Councillor Bobby Feely has a question next.
Yes, thank you. Although Elvid did cover some of what I was going to say, I'm aware that mental health issues have increased during the pandemic, and has this led to any new safeguarding arrangements being needed, or indeed any more money being made available, which is partly what was being alluded to there. But can I just sort of commend you on maintaining the 99.7 performance indicator for inquiries covered within 7 days, which is really good. And also, if it's not too late, allow to commend you also for your Caring in Welsh award earlier on this year for promoting work in the Welsh language, which, as Nicola said, it's very hard to recruit at all levels, but it's even harder in the Welsh language. So well done for that award and your efforts in that direction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Bobby.
But I'd just sneak that in.
I think Councillor Martin Hogg wants to now ask a question.
Hi, thanks. Does this sort of whole system, do you think, is this capturing all cases of adult abuse in Denbighshire, or some? I mean, I can see that it is skewed towards care home, and there's perhaps reasons for that that you explained earlier. But are there other routes where, you know, abuse can be reported, say, to police or schools, and those wouldn't necessarily get as far as your team? Or is this indeed the full picture of Denbighshire? I noticed on your personal alleged responsible for abuse pie chart, that's about, it's either paid employee or other adult at risk. It surprises me that there's only two sort of options there.
It just happened to be that those categories, that the cases we dealt with just happened to fall into those two categories, is what that's about. But in terms of your first question, the local authorities have the lead in dealing with safeguarding referrals for adults. This is all about adults. There's nothing about safeguarding children within this report. So if a safeguarding referral went into the police, or maybe Care Inspectorate Wales might pick up on the safeguarding issues, they have to send the referrals through to us. We will work alongside our partner agencies, and they're involved in discussions around the referrals. When we're dealing with an inquiry, we will be talking to police, contracts and commissioning, other practitioners, care homes. So we'll be expanding that discussion, but all referrals need to come through the safeguarding team.
Okay, thanks. And is it reported on in a similar way across different counties and different areas in the UK, so you can sort of compare?
Yes.
How
yes.
Denbighshire is? Right.
Yes, and we also under the North Wales Safeguarding Board, layers, and one of them being the Conwy and Denbighshire Delivery Group, where members of the safeguarding team and other agencies meet on a monthly basis, and at that meeting we compare statistics between ourselves and Conwy, for example, but there's also the overview under the North Wales Safeguarding Board, and also then links to reports from CIW around national statistics.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that, Martin. I am now going to move on. There are no more questions that I can see from the room or indeed on the screen. So I am now going to move to the recommendation. And the recommendation is that members receive and comment on the report and acknowledge the importance of a corporate approach to safeguarding for adults at risk, and the responsibilities of the council to view this as a key priority area. Would someone like to move? Councillor Peter Scott's moved. Is someone seconded? Elvid is seconded it, I think. Thank you for that. And thank you, officers, for the report, and thank you, Ellen, for coming along and presenting this report. It is an extremely important report moving forward with this council. And thank you, officers, for the excellent report.
Thank you.
Hands on acceptance. Thank you. Thank you. That's quite clearly passed.
Thank you.
We're moving on now to the last item on the agenda, Agenda 9, which is our Forward Works programme. And that's over to our support officer. It's been invaluable this morning.
Yeah. Yes, this is your usual work programme report. So I'll just take a bit of time on it today because some of you are new to this committee. Now, the purpose of this outstanding report is really that you regularly look at the forward work programme for this committee to make sure that it's current and it's got all the items you want on it. Now, there's a mechanism for getting an item onto a scrutiny committee work programme, and that's through the completion of that form in Appendix 2 to the report, which then goes to our scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group. and then they determine whether that item is suitable for scrutiny or may be more suitable for another forum. By following the test that you can see in the flowchart on the back of that form. Now, the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group are due to meet on the 28th of July. So if you've got any items you think that merit scrutiny, fill one of those forms in, send it to me, and then I can put it in front of the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group. If I can have them from you sort of, well, no later than a week before the meeting, then they can be considered at that meeting. Then that group then, if it decides it does merit scrutiny, will allocate it to one of the scrutiny committees to have a look at. Now, you as a committee do have a current forward work programme, is what's basically what you inherited from the predecessor committee in the last council. So the items that are on there at the moment are from them. Some of them are standard items, and you'll notice on the 15th of September, you've got the Community Safety Partnership. Now, you're the council's designated scrutiny committee for crime and disorder, so that's why that item is there, and it comes on an annual basis. There are other items there as well that come to you periodically, and there's a report again in September of the North Wales Regional Partnership Board, their annual report. We've also got an item on there, but it hasn't been confirmed as yet. Ddinbych Voluntary Services Council. They came to the committee probably about 12 months ago now, and the committee at that time were keen to have them back and to see what progress they're making and how the council and them are working together on various projects. So I don't know if you want to continue to have that one on there.
I think we should, because it's been, we've got a new I think we should, because we have a new director in place now there, and I do believe it would be good practice for us to pick it up and perhaps just make a note of where they're up to, and then perhaps it might not fit well with on our shoulders for the future, but I do believe we should pick it up and just see where they're at. I don't know whether members would be happy to see that happen. Yes. Yeah.
So we do say for scrutiny committees meetings not to have any more than 4 agenda items. So you've got 3 pretty big ones there. You don't have to have 4, and who knows what will come out of the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group as well. So we'll keep those on for September then, and there's plenty of time to have a look then for October and onwards. Yes. But you know, feel free to fill that form in if you've got any items you want to bring forward. Now in Appendix 3 to that report, you've got the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. So that's just handy for reference for yourselves to have a look on there in case there's any items that Cabinet are probably taking decisions on in the near future that you might want to have an input into beforehand. And then Appendix 4 is just the progress on your recommendations since the last committee meeting, which was in February. Another item that usually appears on your agenda, but it's not there today, is an item called feedback from committee representatives on council boards and groups. Now, there was no point in putting it on today because as yet, none of the scrutiny committees have appointed representatives onto other boards and groups. But when that one does become online, it's just your opportunity as a representative to report back to the committee on what those boards or groups are doing and raise any concerns you think may benefit from having scrutiny to see if you get them onto an agenda in future. So that's what that will be about. If you have any queries on anything scrutiny related, please feel free to contact me at any time. And one of the practice we used to have in the old council, which was pre-COVID, was to have pre-meeting planning sessions for the entire committee. Pre-COVID, it was on the morning of the meeting, which was quite easy to do then because we were all in the same room. Now, if we want to resurrect these, I think it would be easier to do them virtually a day or 2 before the meeting. By that time, you'll have had time to read your papers, and the purpose of them is really to highlight the issues of concern in any reports, devise questioning strategies and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you're happy to start that process perhaps from September onwards.
I do think it is important. Yes, yes.
All this is new, so it's
Yes.
not to take on board.
Yeah.
Obviously, some people
Yeah. Yeah. So
just familiarise ourselves with all this.
yeah. I think it has been good practice in the past, and I do believe it would be a way forward, especially for new members, but also for all members, because it helps to focus onto a report and pick out what is important and what we really should tease out. So I think that's the important thing, that we at least we give it a try next time and see if all members are very happy with it. But I'm sure it is good practice, and we will all find it beneficial. Thank you. So members seem to be of an opinion that we do keep the practice in place. Thank you, members. Yeah, I think we'll do that.
Okay, and that's all I've got today, unless anybody else got any questions or anything.
No, just it's not switched off, but I just would reiterate that it would be quite good if we had a sort of major presentation, if at least one of the people could be present, in the same way that some councillors turn up and some are happy to do it online. Maybe it would be good if some officers did turn up.
I can take that up. I don't think we can make anybody turn up. No, but
suggest.
yeah.
Yes.
I do take your point. It's the first time I've chaired a meeting virtually, and I did find it quite challenging, especially with the screen being to my right or to my left. And I did make the request that I'll sit in front of a screen next time, so I'm quite able to see whose hands goes up. But I'm told we can't move from here because it's all set up for here. So I've just got to put up with that. But I think that it's beneficial, the virtual meetings, because it does help. Sorry, Gary, I missed your hand going up, but Gary, you wanted to comment on this.
Oh, yeah, it's just in terms of the way that the hybrid meetings, you're right, Chair, we have to run webcast meetings from the chamber, because that's the only place where we've got the facility to be able to channel it for broadcast in a simultaneous bilingual way. In terms of officer attendance at meetings, the process that we adopted at council about hybrid new ways of working for meetings, etc., was that members would attend and officers would attend from the location that best suited the workload, etc., they had on that day. So there will be a mix going forward, that some officers will attend in person at meetings and others will attend remotely. And the idea is that, you know, we're not wasting officer time in traveling. We're not the carbon emissions that go with that. But clearly there will be times when officers themselves will feel that perhaps the content they're presenting will be best presented in person, etc. But you know, the whole point of this is that we're getting people working in as an efficient way as possible.
Yeah, it was just that the first item, the North Wales Economic Ambition Board, it was the whole screen needed to be used for the presentation. So it would have been good if somebody had been here. That's what made me think about it. And then I noticed as the meeting went on, in actual fact, there were nobody presenting who actually came to the chamber.
And I think that what we may need to look at is how, when we've got presentations, whether there's a way of the people in the chamber being able to see that presentation on a separate screen, either a separate screen that they have or in the chamber, and we can take a look at that.
Yes, thank you for that, Gary. I'm hopeful we will get this right. I'm sure it will happen. But I think now, I'm not sure what time it is, whether we're in our time allocation. So I bring the meeting to a close now. Thank you for your attendance and thank you for the work that you've done today. Thank you.